Hey parents and students, this is Mr. Cope, about to explain to you how some of the grading policies work in AP World History. I'm going to talk to you today about quiz corrections, multiple choice test corrections, essay corrections, late work, classwork, and homework. Let's start with quiz corrections. The way quiz corrections work are you need to take the thematic learning objectives. You can find the thematic learning objectives by going to the class website and then clicking on the About page and then clicking here where it says General Documents for the class. When you do that, you'll go into the folder and you'll be able to see right here at the bottom where it says Thematic Learning Objectives. When I click on that link, it'll take me to the thematic learning objectives for the class. There are 5 thematic learning objectives, and you can see on the screen here that the first theme is interaction between humans and the environment. Short term or shortened name, it is simply the environment. There are multiple learning objectives about the environment, and you can see those listed here as I scroll down, ENV1, ENV2, and you can look beside each one of the sub-themes. It tells you which key concept it links with, which implies that that will be a theme that will be present during that particular unit. So right here you can see that ENV2 will be linked in Unit 1. It'll also be linked in Unit 2, but it will not be linked in Unit 3, 4, 5, or 6. And you can see that because they are not listed there. So themes go across multiple units in this class. Once you have your thematic learning objective, you will link that thematic learning objective to every question on the quiz. So that would be all 5 questions that are multiple choice questions on the quiz. So you need to take each particular quiz, like you see listed here, and you would take question 1 and figure out which thematic learning objective question 1 links with. Once you've done that, you will then find a quote from the book. I have a copy of the book right here so that you can see it. You'll find in that book a quote that links to the theme, explaining why that question would then be part of the environment if it happens to be part of the environment, or state building if it happens to be part of state building. You will then have to explain how this quote fits to that thematic learning objective. You do this for every single question, which means you can earn back half a point per question. Now the short answer questions are different. If you got the short answer question correct, or part of the short answer correct, for instance, if you were to get part A correct, what you would do then is you would link part A. So in this case, if I got part A of this question correct, I would link it to a thematic learning objective just like I did the other 5 questions. If I missed part of the question and got half credit, or I didn't get any credit at all and I got 0 points, I would link that then to, I wouldn't link it to anything. I would simply rewrite this part so that I could have the practice of rewriting it. The quiz corrections need to be completed by the day of the unit test, with the exception of the last quiz that was in that particular unit. That last quiz needs to be completed by the time of the next unit test. The reason for doing this is because the College Board links all of their questions to a thematic learning objective, and the students need to get used to the language that is used in the thematic learning objectives and understand how each specific question is specifically getting them to think around one of the themes of the class. The next topic that I'd like to talk to you about are how we go about doing multiple choice test corrections. Very similar to the quiz corrections, but slightly different. These will be linked to the key concepts in the course, and you'll find the key concepts by going to the same General Documents folder that I showed you earlier. When you get to the key concepts page, you will then see a list of all of the key concepts. They're broken down by units. So period 1 is unit 1 for us, and there are multiple key concepts that I'm scrolling through here. And then period 2 will be unit 2 for us. And you can see here we begin period 2. Each unit has its own set of key concepts. So you have key concept 2.1, Roman numeral 1, letter A, letter B, and then we go on to a new Roman numeral, Roman numeral 2, letter A, letter B, letter C, letter D, letter E, and letter F. All of these key concepts are required learning in the classroom. And so that means that every single one of those key concepts will appear either as a quiz question at some point during the year, or a test question at some point during the year, or an in-class activity during the year. So what you do for test corrections, you only link a key concept to a quote for the questions you miss. You don't do it for all of the questions, unlike the quiz corrections where you do it, in fact, for all of the questions because there are only 5. So you use a quote from the book, you explain how that quote links to the key concept that you identified the question is assessing. And when you do that, it will raise your overall score on your multiple choice portion of the test to the equivalent score on the AP exam. So the AP exam is scaled. If you look here, if you were to score an 80, I will enter an 80 as your test grade because that's the grade you earned. However, if you do test corrections, it'll raise your grade to a 90. And that's because roughly an 80 will earn a 5 on the AP exam. And a 5 is the equivalent of an A in this class. If you look, a 70 will earn you roughly a 4 on the AP exam, which means that that's basically a B. So if you earn a 70, you would get an 80 once you did test corrections. If you earned a 76, that's still going to keep you in the B range, and you'll go up to an 86. As I scroll further down, you'll notice that a 55 actually will scale to a C in this class, because a 55 will roughly get you a 3 on the AP exam. So I will enter a 55 in the grade book, but once you do test corrections, that will raise your grade to a 70. So you can see in the left-hand column what your actual score was on the each individual unit test, and if you do corrections on the questions that you missed, you will find what your score will be on the right once I adjust it to the AP score. So there is a big benefit to doing the test corrections because the bump will raise the grade pretty dramatically. The test corrections need to be completed by the end of the next unit or the end of the quarter, depending on which one will come first. And again, the reason for doing this is so that the students see that every question they are being asked links to a key concept, and they get used to the language that is being used in the key concepts so that they'll be better prepared to see those types of questions on the AP exam. And again, those questions will look very similar to the questions that you would have seen on the multiple choice question test for each quiz, where you have an image or a reading that you have to deal with and then answer questions based on that. Moving on to essay test corrections. Again, they work very similarly. You'll use the key concepts to link what was the essay question linked to, which specific key concept was the essay linked to. That would only be one key concept in most cases. And then you only correct the parts of the essay rubric that you missed. Again, you'll go to the general documents that I showed you earlier in this video, and when you get there, you will see all of the rubrics that are used in this class. For instance, this is the rubric that is used for the DBQ essay. We've not talked about the DBQ essay yet in class. However, we have talked about, sorry, I scrolled too quickly there. We have talked about the long essay question, and you can see here is the rubric for the long essay question. So for instance, if I missed the synthesis point on the essay, I would have to rewrite that section. I don't have to rewrite the whole essay. I would just have to rewrite the synthesis part. If I missed the thesis statement, then I would have to rewrite the thesis statement part. I don't have to rewrite the entire introduction to the essay, just the thesis statement, because that's the point I missed. This will also be due by the date of the next test, and what will happen here is your grade will move up 1 point on the grading scale, just like to adjust your score, similarly to how it was on the multiple choice test. And you can see here on the right, if you scored a 4 is roughly a B again, and so that'll earn you an 80. So if you did test corrections on the essay, that would bump you up to an 85. If you earned a 3, that would roughly be a C, and you'd have a 70. If you did the test corrections, that would bump you up to a 75. So you can see that you're going to bump up by 5 percentage points for doing all of these corrections. And this is an all or nothing thing, just like the test corrections are an all or nothing thing. And the purpose behind these test corrections are to help the students develop the skills necessary to be skilled writers for our class. If I continue on and look at homework, homework is actually not the guided reading sheet, or at least it will not be collected for a homework grade. The guided reading sheets are simply, and I'm showing you one here, are simply designed to help the students organize their thoughts as they do the reading. And they're allowed to use the guided reading sheets on their quizzes. They can very easily be a big help. I would encourage the students to link the definitions of cuneiform, for instance, where I'm hovering right now, to a thematic learning objective and to one of the key concepts. That way they will see that all of these terms link to different concepts and learning objectives so that they can begin to recognize where the overlaps lie, and they can better predict how they're going to be assessed. There will be 2 or 3 homework assignments per quarter in most cases. But these assignments are designed to make the class function on a much higher level. And what I mean by that is earlier in the school year, I had the students bring in personal items, personal artifacts that we use to help start organizing thesis statements and start organizing our thoughts regarding using evidence in essays that we're writing. And so because they had to bring in artifacts from their house, that became a homework assignment and it was scored accordingly. Typically, the homework assignments are pretty straightforward. They should bump grades up, or they should be used as a buffer to bump up grades. But if they're not turned in or they're not completed, then they certainly will negatively impact the grade as well. Moving on to classwork, functions in a very similar way to homework. Typically, there are 2 or 3 assignments per quarter that are graded specifically as a classwork grade. Not every assignment is graded as a classwork grade. And these are typically assignments that span multiple days. For instance, you can see here, this is a drawing of the city Leakik. And this is a city that we used and are using in class to help us develop our change in continuity over time essay writing skills. And because we're going to be using the images of this city to help us develop those skills over the span of 3 to 4 class periods, this will count as a classwork grade. And typically every student does very well on these classwork assignments because we're doing them so consistently. All of the work is typically done, and it's done on the scale that it needs to be completed at, and therefore the students will see their grade be protected by the classwork grade as well. Again, just like the homework grades, if the students slack off in any way or don't complete the assignments or don't turn them in, then their grade will be negatively impacted by the lack of work that was done. The last thing that I want to talk about is late work. I always accept late work. I'll accept late work until the end of the unit or when the quarter ends, depending on which one happens first, and late work will incur a 10% penalty per assignment. So we want to make sure that we're turning in work on time, specifically the homeworks and the classworks. I hope this helped to explain the policies revolving around all the various different topics, specifically quiz corrections, multiple choice test corrections, essay test corrections, late work, classwork, and homework. And if you have questions about these, please feel free to contact me. You can email me at mcope@wcpss.net. That's Matt. It's mcope@wcpss.net. I look forward to working with you, and I hope that we can have a great relationship this year and get everyone where they need to be by May so that they can be a great success on the AP exam. Thank you.